And we are live here with the Bull Bash. Thank you guys for joining me on the podcast tonight. Tonight, I'm going to break down the Houston Texans 2026 draft. And if you give me just 1 second, I'm going to adjust my lighting here real quick. You get that one for me, please? Thank you. There we go. Much better there. Now, hopefully, everybody can see me. And getting into this 2026 NFL draft. It was definitely bizarre, definitely head scratching in terms of what we expect as Houston Texans fans. Definitely wasn't a predictable draft in the very, very least for us. So we're just going to look at the first question that we have to ask, and that is, how do we know what a first round draft choice looks like? Right? That is the question that we have to ask ourselves. How do we know that Kalen Rutledge is a first-round draft choice when looking at him? That's how we have to sit there and evaluate the player. Now, for me, myself, it's basically compiling, highlight videos from years past and comparing him to how he stacks up against those players. A first-round offensive lineman, to me, is a Joe Thomas. It is a Zach Martin, a Quentin Nelson, somebody of that caliber. You get what I'm saying. So, as fans, when we watch over the years, we kind of categorize these guys and compare them against things that we have seen in the past. That is how we know what a first-round draft choice looks like. And then when you get onto it, the same question. If I were to say, what does a $50 million defensive end look like? Texas fans are immediately going to respond with a defensive player of the year, a Will Anderson, a Myles Garrett type of player. You kind of categorize the guys with what you're putting them into. That's how we know. Now, I'm not saying that the mock draft community is the be all, end all. It is the Bible that, is the last say in the matter of where a player is drafted. They can be wrong. We have seen that before. I mean, we had Arian Foster, who was one of the best running backs during his time in the NFL, and he went undrafted. 32 teams missed on Arian Foster 7 times. So, yes, the draft community can be wrong. But then there's an eye test. And that's what I want Houston Texans fans to use. Don't trust what's being told to you. Don't trust, what you read, what your buddy said, what a magazine has said about a player. Use your eyes. Go through, compile what a first-round draft choice looks like, and then go from there. Build up that memory in your head. Say, hey, this guy, he fits here. But you know what? I wouldn't necessarily take him there. So when I look at Kalen Rutledge and I watch the tape on Big Red, I like what I see. I like the player. There is nothing wrong with him in my eyes, except for where he was drafted and how much draft capital was given up. And how do I know that we gave up too much draft capital? Well, because you had to compare it against other trades that were made within the same year's draft. The draft value fluctuates from year to year, position by position, and the range of where you are drafting in. If I'm trading up into the top 10, there is a premium paid to get into those picks. If it is a quarterback-heavy class, I am paying a premium to trade up and draft a quarterback. If there is a lack of players at a certain position, I should have to pay a premium to jump up and draft the best player at that position. But what went on this year was the complete opposite of that. What we saw this year was like the Dallas Cowboys leapfrogging the Miami Dolphins by 1 spot, making a trade for 2 fifth-round picks and moving up 1 spot to get the best safety in this year's draft in Caleb Downs. All right. They were within the top 15 picks. There should have been a luxury tax on where they were picking. there should have been a luxury tax on the Cowboys for the lack of drop off behind Caleb Downs and what they had to do to move up to get him. But the Cowboys did not pay that. And then you see Buffalo successively trade down after making the trade with us to move up to 26, and the teams behind us paid less and less and less and less. That is how we as fans determine whether we overpaid for being able to move up 2 spots in the draft to select a player in the first round. That is how we have to use and view the draft. It's what is going on within the framework of that year's draft. That is how we have to look at it, how we have to preview it. Everybody's opinion is going to vary. Everybody's opinion is not going to be the same as mine. It's not going to be the same as Mel Kiper's. Okay? But what I'm saying to you as Texans fans is Mel Kiper's been doing it for 20-something years or longer. And more often than not, Mel Kiper is wrong that he is right. So, yes, when they say the consensus on this guy is that he is a second-round pick, not always the case. But now as Texans fans, we look at this in the case of how we view our general manager, Nick Caserio, and has he earned the benefit of a doubt to be able to make moves like this and go to the podium and justify these moves? Well, the answer to that question is, if you're looking at this objectively, no, he does not have that right. He is not bulletproof to where he earns immunity from second guessing of his draft choices, because more often than not, his draft choices are either out of the league, on their way there, or they're no longer with the football team. We look at his offensive draft choices, whether it was a Blake Fisher, whether it was Juice Scruggs, Kenyon Green. I mean, we got a list. Dameon Pierce, John Mechie. He does not have the benefit of being bulletproof from immunity and criticisms when people are starting to look at his drafts. And when we look at it defensively, we could say, okay, we're not going to question what the Texans do defensively, because quite honestly, we have the coaches to develop players defensively. We have Matt Burke, Rod Wright developing defensive line. No issues there. Billy Davis, D'Amico Ryans developing linebackers. You got Stephen Adedoje and Dino Vasso developing the defensive backs. We have no issues there. But the offense and the coaching staff on that side of the ball has not shown us the ability to develop players. And in that sense, we are a bit skeptical when we're told something about a player offensively, especially when it comes from our general manager, who last year told us there was no problems with the offensive line, and then proceeded to go out there and have to try to fix that offensive line. And for the 5th year in a row, we are now retooling this offensive line again. So what I'm saying is, yes, there is a reason why Texans fans have a right to feel skeptical about the offensive players in this draft, why they have the right to question whether these players are going to be developed better than what they have been in the past, and whether they are going to transition from college players to successful NFL careers. That's what we as Texans fans are looking at when we see this draft. Now, Kalen Rutledge, right, guard from Georgia Tech, we look at him. When you watch a highlight film, you really, really have to sift through that highlight film. And you have to try to find the pass blocking reps, because quite frankly, in the highlight films, there were not a lot of those pass blocking reps, even though he gave up 2 sacks over his college career. And I think in 2025, he had around 817 pass blocking reps, which is a considerable amount. But in the highlight films, a lot of what you see of Kalen Rutledge is going to be run blocking. It's going to be him pulling, getting to the perimeter. That's all good. Just remember that with your highlight films, they're cut-ups. They're showing the player's best moments, and they don't necessarily showcase areas in which he struggles. Kalen Rutledge, despite the stats saying that he only gave up 2 sacks in his college career and he has extensive starting experience, when you look into those stats and do the deep dive, it was because they had a quick game at Georgia Tech because they were getting rid of the ball quickly. So, yes, he was being asked to pass block, but he was not being asked to pass protect and sustain those blocks for extended periods of time. So, the question as to whether he is going to be able to do that in the NFL level is something that we are going to have to ask and we're going to have to watch throughout this training camp and throughout preseason. Now, when you watch him on film, the first thing that's going to stand out, it's going to jump off of the tape at you. It's going to be that footwork. Short, choppy steps, very, very quick in and out of his stance. He's a guy that can sit there, turn, immediately get up the alley, get around the corner, and start clearing whatever gets in his way. He has the ability to climb to the second level, the agility, and everything there to be a very, very good offensive guard in the National Football League. There is no question about that. He has the anchor. The one thing I will say that is going to need to be focused on this year is going to be his penchant for playing too tall, right? When he's going to pass block a bigger interior offensive lineman, he's too straight up and down. And you watch him and his back and he's straight and he's absorbing that contact and he's kind of getting what looks like a dog walking on its legs backwards. It's called getting dog walked. He's not using a low center of gravity, getting under the pants, leveraging the defensive lineman and being able to steer, redirect him, get his chest, and move him where he wants him to. So he's going to have to work on those. As far as, the Senior Bowl and everything like that was pretty great from the videos and everything. But, pardon me, with regards to him playing center, I have a little bit of a trepidation. And when you watch the highlight films of Kalen Rutledge and he gets to pull and get around that corner and you start to see the open field and he doesn't have a target in front of him and you watch his feet kind of do this. He's kind of moving in place. He's processing, slows down. For you to be able to play the pivot position in the National Football League, you have to have an elite level of processing power. You have to be able to do it quickly and on the fly. And with his feet doing that when he gets into space and when he doesn't have an open target, that to me shows that his processor slows down when he does not have to immediately make contact with a guy in front of him, when he is just not thinking, he's reflexively attacking straight ahead. He's solid. That's what the other four positions of the offensive line give you. But when you get to the pivot position, you have to be able to think on the fly. You have to be able to recognize things, make your adjustments, communicate with the quarterback, and be able to get that snap off and out of that snap in order to pick up what you have just diagnosed. And it's not an easy position. Like he said in the video, it's more than just reps. It is not just continuing to go through the paces. We saw it with Juice Scruggs. Juice Scruggs did not have the mental capacity to be able to process at an elite level that allowed him to play center at the National Football League level. Now, a lot of people's problem with the Kalen Rutledge pick is where it happened, number 26, what they gave up to move to 26, and who was taken behind them. Sorry. The rumor was that the Tennessee Titans were trying to jump the Texans and draft Kalen Rutledge, which we all saw the rumor was wrong. The Titans were trying to jump into the back end of the first round, and they drafted Falk, the guy that reminds a lot of people of Eric Armstead and Robert Saleh, the head coach in Tennessee. So it was basically misinformation on the Texans' part, and they jumped the gun on a rumor, and it was not exactly the right player. And Texas fans, you look at the picks that came after, like, could you have gotten Kalen Rutledge in the second round? There's a possibility, yes. And there's a possibility that somebody else might have said, you know what, this guy is a first rounder. We'll take a flyer on him here. This was not your typical NFL draft. But the fact of the matter remains, you have to have a considerable amount of drop off between your guy and the next guy for you to be able to make that move and say, I'm comfortable with moving down because of the options that are beneath him. Or you have to justify being able to trade up those spots and take your guy based upon saying, I don't think that the other guys here are going to translate to our system as well as Kalen Rutledge does. And in the case of the Houston Texans, that's exactly what it is. They went for a fit. They went for a player that had the mentality and the mindset and the build and everything like that that fit what they're doing right now currently with the offensive line. Now we get into the second round, and honestly, I think if the Texans were to have flip-flopped these picks and had McDonald as their first-round pick and Kalen Rutledge as a second-rounder, the grades would probably be higher. Mel Kiper gave us a C+. I said this back in 2022. The NFL is cycling back around. It is going back to a run-first offense. There's more 12 to 13 personnel, big tight ends. You're going to see the bell cow running back coming back in, and we did see that. We saw Jahmyr Gibbs. We saw Bijan Robinson. We saw Jeremiah Love this year. Okay, the big running backs are starting to be taken in the first round again. The guys that are considered to be three-down workhorses are coming back into vogue in the NFL. And in order to stop that, you're no longer going to be able to rely on lighter defenses as you were in the past. You're going to have a heavy front to be able to stop the run when they load up to run the ball now. And that is where a guy like McDonald comes into place. This is going to be the new meta going forward. Defenses are starting to go back to the heavier defensive tackles, the more traditional 0-1 techniques that are around 330, 340 pounds of big run pluggers in the middle. You're going to see that as the drafts continue until the league starts to cycle back around and go back to a passing league. And McDonald is a premier run stuffer in the middle of that defense. He is a guy that has the girth, he has the strength and the leverage to be able to draw double teams in the interior of that defensive line. And the one thing about him that stands out on the tape is this guy, as big as he is, can locate the football and is always moving towards the football. He's very solid at diagnosing where the football is going. His instincts are solid. He gets there, and he's able to shut down the run. This is going to help the Texans out in an area where they struggled with back in 2025, which was red zone offense, short yardage situation, teams being able to punch it in from the goal line, the Texans not being able to stop them. That is not going to be the case. With a big guy like McDonald in the middle, Tommy Togiai, Naquan Jones, that is a lot of power up there. And they're going to start doing a lot of things differently now. They're not going to just run it up the middle on the Texans. You're going to see them try to flip it outside, get to the perimeter quickly, outrun the heavy sets in the middle. Now, what Caden McDonald does not bring a lot of is a lot of pass rushing polish. He's got upside. He's got room to develop, but he is not a quick twitch type of player that is going to turn into a guy that's going to give you double-digit sacks. He's not going to be an Aaron Donald, a Warren Sapp, or a John Randall type. On the low end, you may get 3 to 5 sacks out of him a year. That is going to be a good year. What numbers are going to impact his performance and how much he gets paid is tackle for loss. He is a monster in this category. He is a guy that is going to see ball, get ball. He is going to go and basically blow up the play in the backfield. You're not moving him off of that line. You're not getting under him. He is a massive human being, and this guy is going to make sure that if you run up the middle, you're running right into him, and you are not getting any yards. This was a great selection for the Houston Texans. They had him rated as the number 2 defensive tackle on their draft boards behind Peter Woods. I think that Caden McDonald is better than Peter Woods, in my opinion. I think that the way that he gets into the backfield, penetrates, shuts plays down, locates the football, the amount of hustle that he has, Caden McDonald is a better floor, where Peter Woods has a higher ceiling because he has more versatility as a pass rusher. Now we get into the other picks that are coming here, and this is where things kind of go off the rails. The Oklahoma guard, Bebici, Awu, Wewu, Wee, whatever they call him. I cannot get that name right. I'm sorry about that. I will work on that. So I apologize to him if he's watching this. The guy that, the word that we talk about, versatility. He was a guard. He played center. He moved across the offensive line. He's had a lot of good video, a lot of good work. When you watch him at Oklahoma, he plays with a wider base than you typically see offensive guards play. The spacing between his legs and his feet. Okay. And what I will say to that is the guy has a very fluid and light lower half of his body. He's able to shift his weight, redirect very, very well for a big guy. That is one of the things that is going to allow him to be able to survive at the NFL level, to be able to handle when he gets beaten initially and he's able to recover because of that quickness. The one thing I will say for him is the pass blocking is not polished. It is not the best I've ever seen. He has a similar tendency to Kalen Rutledge of playing too tall. And with Rutledge, it's more of a process with him of his feet being so choppy and fast that wherever your feet go, your body follows. And in his frame, he has a tendency to get out over his feet. Well, with Bebici, it is more of a fact that he's trying to use his height advantage to leverage smaller guys and to block down on them, and it's not working for him. He's got to be able to bend and leverage at the NFL level, and that is something that Cole Popovich teaches religiously. It is the core principles of what the Houston Texans do. The principle of the low man wins is all about winning the battle of leverage, getting underneath your defender's pads, being able to get him off of the ball and move him. That is what the Houston Texans do. Now, the other picks that are coming in here, Marlon Klein, tight end from Michigan. This was one of the more debated picks of this draft. A guy that was very, very limited at the college level. He has some good tape out there, and he's got good hands. He's got pretty good route running from what I saw on the video. Blocking is, like they've said, it's a work in progress. He's a guy that came from Germany. He has a tendency to hug rather than to get his hands on a guy, and that will result in a lot of penalties at the NFL for holding. So they're going to have to work with them on that. And the problem that a lot of Texans fans had was not with the pick of Max Clare himself, but with who was taken after him. And the guys that were viewed as better tight end prospects, guys like a Max Clare and Oscar Delp, Roush from Stanford. That was a lot of Texans fans' trepidation with this pick. So we're going to have to see. It's going to be something because from what we heard at the podium from Nick Caserio, it was the guy had a great story, great transition from Germany to the United States, learning how to play football and all that. That's all in good. You drafted a story, you drafted a body type. Now we need to see you go out there, execute, and make it work. That's what we got to see. The next pick we're going to talk about was the Clemson linebacker Woodez. And this was another one that was highly criticized. Wade Woodez was a guy that they said we reach for again. Whatever. If you like the guy and it's a linebacker, I'm not going to question D'Amico Ryans. I'm not going to question his ability to develop a linebacker and the fact that he passed over Anthony Hill for this guy. In my opinion, when I watch a film, the guy from Indiana that we took in the 7th round, he looks good to me. Woodez, on the other hand, looks like there's going to be some refinement needed, some polish and everything like that. So we're going to have to see. But defensively, hey, I gave D'Amico Ryans a benefit of a doubt. We saw what he did with Henry Toto, who was a 5th round draft choice. And they developed him into at least a very good contributing linebacker for the Houston Texans. A guy that, you can trust him to be in the right place. He's going to make mistakes. He's not going to be the best in coverage. But Henry T, more often than not, is going to make the play than he is going to miss it. Now then, we look at Kamari Ramsey, the safety from USC. And this guy, you have to ask yourself, did the Texans get another steal here? This is the player that if you're going to be excited about this draft class in particular, it's either one of the two players. You're either excited about McDonald or you're going to be very, very excited about Ramsey. We have 2 Kamaris on the team now, and this is going to be confusing as all hell because we got like several Jalen's on there as well. So we're trying to keep everybody's name straight, and they're drafting guys with the same name. Thank you very much, Nick Caserio. It's basically going to be a tongue twister for us when we're talking about a player. We're going to have to make sure that we get the right player and make sure everybody knows we're talking about Kamari Ramsey from USC. The tape on him, very, very good tape. Makes you question his draft position. This is a guy that, if you watch the tape, it's Jalen Petrie 2.0. And maybe he is a little bit better than Petrie was coming out of college in pass coverage. This is a guy that can blitz, that can come around the edge, that can sit there, shoot the gaps. He's a guy that plays downhill, physical. He closes fast. He hits with authority. He is a prototypical swarm type of player and primed for that role of filling in for a Jalen Petrie. With that said, you also have Jalen Reed, who is another Petrie clone. And then you have Jalen Petrie, who just signed his contract extension. You have Kalen Bullock on the back end. You got Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Smith as well. That defensive back room is getting loaded. And not everybody's going to be able to stay. There's going to be some concessions had to make. The one thing I will say, and I've heard it said a lot, is we have to keep Kamari Lassiter. We let Kalen Bullock walk. In my opinion, no. I'm going to disagree with that segment of thought and say this. You just drafted somebody who can replace Jalen Petrie. Kalen Bullock on the top end gives your cornerbacks a margin of error that Jalen Petrie does not afford them. He allows them to play aggressively, to gamble, to try to come up with interceptions and jump routes because they had the confidence in him on the back end to be able to cover his area. Defensive backs who could play a deep 3/4 zone with the range that Kalen Bullock has are not a dime a dozen. They're not as readily available as the cornerback prospects coming in and year out. There's a reason why you have not seen a lot of safeties being drafted within the first round. It's usually toward the middle, the late ends of the first round, if there is a safety in that class. But it is not every year. It is not something that's consistent or abundant. So when you have a good safety like that, my recommendation is you have got to keep him because he is that last line of defense. He is what keeps you from giving up those big plays. Now, the next pick is one that I really, really don't like. Isaiah Bond, the wide receiver from Boston College. This guy is, to me, I get that he is one of the leading receivers in Boston College history. But when I watch him, it's just like watching Xavier Hutchinson or Jaden Higgins or Nico Collins with slightly less polish. He does not run a lot of deep routes. He's short, he's intermediate, he gets the ball underneath a lot. He was the beneficiary of a large volume of passes, and he also featured in a Bill O'Brien offense. With that said, there's not a lot of nuance to his route running. There's not a lot of separation in there. And quite honestly, I think he's a guy that either makes his team as a special teams player or he is a guy that is more than likely not going to see past the preseason. But I would not expect him to be able to stick on this roster. And the last guy, give me a second while I look this up because I completely cannot remember his name. I know he's a linebacker from Indiana. Aiden Fisher. There we go. Aiden Fisher. What I saw from him, this guy has a pretty solid build, very fluid in his coverage. He's a guy that on the tape, when you watched it and you watched everything that he did, whether it was rushing the quarterback, whether it was dropping into coverage, whether it was shooting the gaps and taking down a ball carrier in the backfield. This guy brings a lot to work with. And I love the hustle. I love the way that he's able to locate the football, to get there quickly. He is definitely a guy that works in the swarm mentality. So now we're looking at this NFL draft. And when I look at it, what grade do I give this draft? Mel Kiper gave it a C+. He said that the Texans did not do enough to address their needs. Well, according to his big board, the needs on this football team were interior offensive line, defensive tackle, linebacker, cornerback, safety. They drafted all of those things. If there was a complaint that I had that they did not address, it's the lack of depth in the running back room. We saw last year that Woody Marks was banged up. And it was more of a trend at the end of the season. You have a 29-year-old running back in David Montgomery. You have a guy in Jawar Jordan that, let's just be honest about it, he had a good game against the Arizona Cardinals, and that was a lot to do with the fact that the Cardinals were missing tackles all over the place. It was not just Jawar Jordan. He was not consistent. He is not somebody that I would feel comfortable with relying on. And my feeling is that the Texans are going to either make a trade with somebody for another running back to add to this room, or they have already signed somebody as an unrestricted free agent. But for me, when I'm going to grade this draft and I break it down, I give it about a C-. And I'm more critical of this draft than what Mel Kiper was because of the fact that you have a lot that you missed out on in order to move up and grab two players that you felt like were your guys, that most everybody felt like would have still been there. And when we look at it, there's discussions as to the Texans having three players that they reached for in this draft. They talk about Kalen Rutledge, they talk about Wade Woodez, and they talk about, who was the last guy, Marlon Klein, that they reached for. I'm not the one to sit there and tell you that, hey, this was a pick that is not going to work out. But more often than not, when you reach for a player over a draft slot of 100 picks, that sends a message to everybody out there in the community that you know something that somebody else does not know, that you are smarter than everybody else that has been soliciting their opinions on this subject. If you make that move and you double down on it, the only thing I can say for you as a general manager, you absolutely have to be right. You have to make sure that these players work out. Because if not, you may not have a job next year. That is the position that Nick Caserio is in. He is out of second chances. He is out of working with the benefit of the doubt. And he is out of excuses for not being able to fix this offensive line. If we go into 2027 and we still have issues with this offensive line, the finger is pointed directly at Nick Caserio. This is his offensive staff. These are his guys that he brought in. This is his culture on the offensive side of the ball. This is what he wanted to run. There is no disputing that. This is a cut, copy, and paste of a 2017 to 2019 New England Patriots offensive roster that was transplanted here to Houston under Nick Caserio. Jerry Shopinski was there. Cole Popovich was there. Nick Caserio was there. James Ferentz was a player, but he was there. Frank Ross was a special teams coach for the New England Patriots. Ben McDaniels was a passing game coordinator. This is the problem that we have as Houston Texans fans. This is why we get called New England South. Because these guys are repeating the same things in a different time period that did not work with a guy that won 7 Super Bowls. I'm sorry. I cut him one short, minus the one in Tampa Bay. And he left the New England Patriots to go to Tampa Bay for these exact reasons, because the offensive line could not sustain blocks, because the wide receivers were not skilled enough to separate. Those were the reasons why Tom Brady left the New England Patriots and he went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what did the Buccaneers do? They fortified that offensive line. They had Ali Marpet. They had Ryan Jensen. They had there's another guard in there that they had too, and Tristan Wirfs, and they had Mike Evans and everything like that. And they went out and they won the Super Bowl. They had everything Tom Brady needed for support. And the Houston Texans, we have C.J. Stroud. And C.J. Stroud is a great quarterback, but there's nobody out there calling him Tom Brady. C.J. Stroud needs support. He needs for the offensive line to be able to hold up in front of him, for him to be able to do what he does best, what we saw in 2023. This is what this offseason is going to come down to, is this offensive line and these 2 draft picks with the 3 free agents that they bought in. These guys are going to have to solidify this offensive line and protect C.J. Stroud and open up the holes in the run game. Because if not, there is still an excuse to be made for C.J. Stroud. He's been put in a system that was defunct and did not work in the past, and it was implemented again. He is being surrounded by players that do not separate, do not have explosion. And this is what C.J. Stroud is working with, and he is getting frustrated with. And when it comes time for his contract to come up, it's not going to be whether or not C.J. Stroud should be brought back. It's, does C.J. Stroud want to come back? Does he want to continue in this system of frustration with these players and continue going on and being the scapegoat for the problems of the offense? That is what the Houston Texans are trying to fix right here, right now. And it's going to take more than a run game. I'm going to tell you guys that honestly. They did not do enough in this draft to address the deficiencies in the passing attack. Wide receiver, we played addition by subtraction. Isaiah Bond is not making an impact. They let go of Christian Kirk. It is all on the shoulders of a Jalen Noel in his second year, on a returning Tank Dell, and on Jaden Higgins to be able to find somebody who could step up opposite of Nico Collins. And it's incumbent that Nico Collins stays healthy throughout a majority of the season and is available in these playoffs. Because otherwise, the result will be the same. It will be a divisional round exit by the Houston Texans. We've seen it for the past 3 years. We go into the playoffs, we win a wild card game, we make it to the divisional round. We have a lack of depth at the wide receiver position. The other guys cannot step up, and the offense struggled. You cannot keep repeating the same patterns. The running game is great. Opening up play action down the field will do great things. But eventually, you are going to have to throw the football. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There is no way getting around it. There's going to be penalties. You cannot predict that. You cannot prevent that. It is going to happen. It is a necessity. It is a fact. Somebody is going to have a false start. Somebody is going to jump off sides. Somebody is going to hold. It is going to happen throughout the course of a 17-game season. And it is going to put you in an eventual 3rd down and 15, 3rd down and 12 situation. And that is where you're going to see whether or not the Houston Texans offensive line's ability to sustain blocks and allow the receivers to get down the field and open up is going to come into play. C- on this draft. And the reason why. As a general manager coming into this year, you are $14 to $16 million behind the cap. Negative. You're operating in the red. You have to restructure a bunch of contracts and get a little bit of help with them adjusting the salary cap. The only way you get yourself out of that situation is by replacing older veterans on higher price contracts with very cost-effective rookie deals. Guys like a Jarrett Patterson, a 6th-round draft choice, very cheap deal. Guy who is a dependable and probably the best offensive lineman that Nick Caserio has drafted to this point. You have to be able to get those guys in the 6th round, the 5th round, the 7th round. And you're not going to get that if you continuously trade away those picks in order to move up for a guy that you targeted in the 2nd round. You have to be able to develop depth behind the starters. You cannot afford to be top heavy across the bulk of your roster. You cannot afford to have a majority of your talent on the defensive side and neglect the offensive side, because it's just like a boat. When one side gets too talent heavy, the water starts coming in and it sinks the ship. You have to be able to balance out the talent in order to be able to go out there and have a defense that can compete late into December and January, and have an offense that could go out there and execute against higher level competition, because that's what you are going to be facing in December and January. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Peace out. I'll see you next time.